Yo, BitBlock Boom, Dallas, Texas, 2025. I'm here with President Porter. Dennis Porter. Big breaking, ultra breaking. Dennis, last time we had a conversation on air, we were with Senator Lummis in D.C. So many things have happened since then. The reintroduction of the Bitcoin Act, I believe it's called Bitcoin Act 2.0, and lots of movement on the state level. You have so many states. It's absolutely incredible. It's snowballed, that's essentially at this point. And a lot of that, is thanks to you. You are the vanguard. What I said in D.C., you are the vanguard for the strategic Bitcoin reserve initiatives on the state level, man. So do you have any updates for us on that level?
Well, Nico, good to see you again. Always a pleasure. It was also great to be working at Mine and Disrupt with you to put the content together there. And that's a little bit of an exaggeration. Thank you for giving me the credit that you have on this issue of strategic Bitcoin reserves. There's certainly a lot of different groups and a lot of different people working really hard on the ground to make this stuff become a reality. And from an update perspective, we have 5 states really in the running right now to be able to get this done first at the state level. Certainly we're in the state of Texas right now, the great state of Texas, where there is a huge open window here for this policy to get across the finish line. It's already passed in the Senate, and man, what a great hearing they had talking about it. You could really get a sense that lawmakers are starting to understand why Bitcoin is so important. But you also have Oklahoma right there as well. They passed it out of the House. You've got it in Arizona. They might be the first to pass it in the House and the Senate. Might be a little bit of a struggle getting the governor on board there. But we have Ohio, and we have North Carolina, and we have Michigan as well. All these states are in the running really to be the first to get it across the finish line. And for us, one of the things I say is there's a lot of lawmakers in a lot of states that want to do this stuff, but the political reality is different in every state. When the first time we started to work on policy at the state level, we got 7 bills introduced. We passed 2 into law. Then we turned around and got about 20 introduced the next year and passed 2 into law. You got to remember that it's just because there's 30 bills being introduced doesn't mean you're going to all of a sudden jump the number to 10 or 20 still states passing this stuff into the law in the first year. But keep in mind that once the first state does it, then it becomes much easier for the second state and the third state and the fourth state. I have lawmakers who legitimately ask me with regards to different policy verticals where else has this been done? We get that a lot with Bitcoin rights, what we call digital rights, right to self-custody, right to be able to run a node, right to peer-to-peer transactions. We had a lawmaker who was everyone's telling us it's never been done before. We're like, dude, it's been passed in now 6 states. So the momentum will build and will build much faster and be able to push forward much quicker once we get it done in one state. And I really firmly believe that we will get it at least one state this year, if not 2.
It's absolutely incredible, unbelievable. I would have never have imagined that even a remote possibility 5 years ago. So, credit to you, man. Incredible work. And also on the federal level, it seems like it's happening as well. It has more momentum. Dennis, you have more experience in politics than I do. Is it possible for the Bitcoin Act 2.0 to actually be enshrined into law?
Yeah, I absolutely believe there's a shot to get it done. The big struggle, credit to Senator Lummis and her team who have done so much work to get so many co-sponsors on. And of course, she was also named the chair of the Digital Asset Subcommittee in the Senate, which is a huge move because now she has the ability to truly move legislation forward. She has the ability to put on hearings. I know they plan to do one for strategic Bitcoin reserves. But there's a political reality at the same time, right? Not only do you have to get to a place where Democrats are on board with this in the Senate for the committee, but you also are going to need for those folks to come on board on the full Senate vote. So I would say, just like Senator Lummis said, there's still work to be done. She said that in New York recently. She said that on the trail. She's certainly always on the trail, very hardworking. So there is work to be done. I would not expect that it would be done before August, which is when most of the crypto legislation is going to get across the finish line. You got stablecoin legislation that's happening first. They've passed it out of committee in the House and the Senate, and then you also need market structure to get done as well. But I think people might be pleasantly surprised. There is an angle to potentially do a little bit of progress, make a little bit of progress, I should say, on strategic Bitcoin reserve in market structure. But we got to get these things done first. And I will, just to be clear here, those things are actually great for Bitcoin. A lot of times, all the Bitcoiners, all they want to hear about is strategic Bitcoin reserve. And I understand why. But stablecoin legislation and market structure are both very, very, very good for Bitcoin for a couple of reasons. One is, I try to tell people, keep in mind, there are people all over this world who are living on double-digit, triple-digit inflationary currencies. And when you live in that environment, there's no way to plan or save for the future. So I'm definitely not a burn it down kind of guy when it comes, I mean, obviously I'm in politics, so I do the government stuff. I'm not a burn it down kind of guy when it comes to the dollar. I think there's a way to get dollars in the hands of a lot of people, and when they're on that more stable fiat, they have a much better chance of buying into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And if they're doing it on stablecoins, they're already on chain, so to speak. They're in the crypto universe. I know that's like a curse word in the Bitcoin space, but they're in the crypto universe on a more stable currency. Then they can move laterally, very easy to get on Bitcoin. Dollar holders and users are the biggest buyers of Bitcoin in the world. It's not even close. Like, there's no one that's in the running.
I 100% agree, and I think that Bitcoiners had this theory that essentially what was going to be happening in developing countries is specifically countries that have relatively unstable fiat currencies. You're going to see this mass adoption of Bitcoin. But what really happened was this mass adoption of digital dollars, Tether, for example. And it's gone viral, essentially. And I completely agree with you. It's a stepping stone. And the reason it's a stepping stone is because it gets people used to the idea of having a digital wallet, right? And it's very easy to go from a digital wallet to Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
And other thing I'll say as well is what I think a lot of Bitcoiners underestimated is in the developing world, people aren't really, they're just trying to get by. They're just trying to survive, right? They can't shoulder the volatility that Bitcoin has. For them, holding a $100 bill or holding a dollar is like the equivalent of holding, this massive bar of gold. It's essentially a tool for survival. So I 100% agree. I know that might be unpopular in Bitcoin circles, but it is the market reality. The market reality is that there's been massive amounts of stablecoin adoption in the global south, in the developing world. That's the reality. As a Bitcoiner, I would say that's a good thing because they're just one step away from adopting Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my family lived in Juarez, Mexico for 3 years. I moved there when I was 16, and everywhere you went, every vendor, every individual, they didn't want the peso, they wanted the dollar. And for good reason. When I moved there and I lived there for 3 years, it was a 10-to-1 exchange. Today, it's a 21-to-1 exchange. And so all of these people that are living in these developing countries, even Mexico, which is definitely on the top, I would say, higher spectrum of developing countries, they want the dollar. They're familiar with the dollar, they understand it. But then once they're there, they can plan and save for the future better. If you're in triple-digit inflation, you cannot save for the future. There's just no way you can do it. You're trying to survive, like you said. You're just trying to put bread on the table. And so if Bitcoiners really want to see this world that we all know is possible, I think it's important to get people on the stablecoin, then get people to Bitcoin. That's going to accelerate us to the right direction. And it's also going to give us a better, softer landing. Because, you have these doom and gloom Bitcoiners who are like, oh, let's just let it all fall apart, and then like Bitcoin will rise from the ashes. Listen, at the end of the day, if you go towards that environment, your children and your children's children might not ever actually experience the world we know is possible with Bitcoin, because they're just going to try to be they're going to be buying guns, they're going to be buying ammo, they're going to be buying bread. They're not going to be worried about saving in Bitcoin. They're going to be worried about staying alive. So I would prefer a much softer landing that way. So that's why I think that type of legislation matters. And additionally, on market structure, if you want to see, there's a lot of great startups in the space. There's a lot of great Bitcoin startups. And if you want to see massive investment into this ecosystem, you're going to need well-formed regulations. You're going to need regulatory certainty, is what a lot of people call it in Washington, D.C. Because if you're a billionaire investor, you can put your money anywhere you want. You have your pick of the litter when it comes to investing. And you're looking at the Bitcoin space, and you're going, from a risk perspective, I'm a little concerned that if I invest into layer 2s, if I invest into things like Start9 and various other types of companies, that I'll wake up in a year and some government is going to basically regulate away my ability for that investment to be successful, even though I believe in it as a billionaire investor potentially. So what they wait for is they wait for these regulations to be set in stone, because typically in Washington, D.C., when you set those regulations in stone for an industry, they stay that way for a very, very long time. They're hard to change. And this, and as a good example, if you look at the 1996 Telecommunications Act, right after that passed, that Telecommunications Act, it re-regulated all of the telecommunications industry, broadband, internet, you name it. And that led to, you can look at it, go look at the charts. Every single chart is a huge up and to the right when it comes to investment, when it comes to users, when it comes to adoption. So you'd think, wow, why would regulations have that big of an impact? But it really is that certainty that investors who have billions and billions of dollars, they want that certainty before they invest into the space. So if you really do want to see this universe expand, the Bitcoin universe expand, even though we know that regulations, very unlikely that they're going to hurt Bitcoin, But at the end of the day, we want them in place so that those big investors have the confidence to invest in a lot of the great companies that are here today at this conference, sponsoring, and so that those investments can grow and that we can see Bitcoin expand across the world.
100% agree with you. Dennis, I want to talk about a topic that is, I know, very important to you, and it's very important to me, and I would say, I think we're the only ones that emphasize this and put so much importance on this. And you know what I'm going to say? The importance of bipartisanship in Bitcoin regulation and just the overall political landscape, right? We went from a hostile administration last year to a more pro-Bitcoin administration this year, but what I wish as a Bitcoiner, and I've told you this at least 1,000 times, is for Bitcoin not to become this partisan talking point, right? For it to be supported by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. What progress have we made there? I know that there are some Democrats like Ro Khanna that do support Bitcoin, but do you see the Democratic Party essentially changing their opinion of Bitcoin, being more pro-Bitcoin? I know on the state level, they're extremely pro-Bitcoin, but on the federal level, that wasn't the case at least last year. So do you have an update on that, Dennis? Do you have some hopeful news? Do you have some positive news in regards to that front?
I mean, absolutely. We're seeing more Democrats vote for, of course, it's crypto legislation, but we're seeing more Democrats vote for crypto legislation than ever before. We're seeing more Democrats voice support for this industry than ever before. We're seeing that at the state level, and we're seeing it at the federal level. And keep in mind, I don't think we should separate the two too much, because states like California and all these other states, California is the fourth, fifth largest economy in the world, and we just saw the chair of Assembly, Banking, and Finance introduce digital rights to protect the right to self-custody, to protect the right to engage in Bitcoin, buy, sell, trade Bitcoin. And so that's critical. And a lot of times these state lawmakers, what ends up happening is they move to the federal level. I think it's something like 50% of all federal lawmakers were at one point a state lawmaker or served at a sort of statewide seat at the state level. So if we get a lot more folks on the state level to be moving the right direction, that's going to have big impacts moving forward. Yeah, we absolutely do need to make sure that this is a nonpartisan, bipartisan thing. But I will say there's one thing, and this is probably what some of the super pro-Trump Bitcoiners don't want to hear, is that because Trump has been so unmitigated in his support of all things crypto, everything from meme coins to Bitcoin, that has left an opening for Democrats to come in and say, you know what, we like Bitcoin, we like stablecoins, we like some of this stuff that's clearly got a value add, but we don't like this stuff that's way over here. And you already see that taking place. You saw Democrats introduce an anti-meme coin bill to essentially restrict the ability for public officials to profit off of their public office by just sort of creating a system where they are not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to promote and push out a meme coin when they're running for or they're in office. Now, they're not in power, so that bill's not going to be put in place, but that's just a way that Democrats have the ability, I think, to move into this space, which is going to gain them more support. Because if you're just oh, we're so pro-crypto, we're as pro-crypto as Trump, people are just going to vote for Trump. That's why pick the guy that's second place? You're going to want the guy that's first place. He's been there, he's been fighting for you. And I think it's a big thing that Trump did what he did on Bitcoin and digital assets. But at the same time, there's this avenue now for Democrats to come in and say, yeah, we love Bitcoin and we love these things, but we don't like the darker side of this space. And it's funny enough because in my home state of Oregon, I spoke to one of the most far left Democrats there, and I gave her the pitch about why we should do digital rights in the state. And I said, this comes from a place of really caring about Bitcoin for me. I know it says digital rights in there, digital assets in there, but this is why Bitcoin matters. This is why I'm doing it. And I think it's important to have tech neutral policy. She literally turns to me and goes, why don't we just do Bitcoin? Why do we do all this other stuff? Oh, wow. Out of nowhere. I was like, I mean, you're listen, I like you. I like where you're going with that. I'm the Bitcoin guy, so that's music to my ears. But at the end of the day, I still think it's smart policy to focus on this from a tech neutral perspective, because that's going to help us in the long run to make sure we don't run into any major problems. I'm not against Bitcoin only policy. It's just very difficult to get Bitcoin only policy across the finish line. I think that for things like strategic Bitcoin reserves, it makes more sense, and I think you're going to see probably the space move that direction as lawmakers better understand the technology. I think you're going to see more Bitcoin-only strategic Bitcoin reserve bills at the state level. I think you're obviously going to see more Bitcoin-only stuff at the federal level with Senator Lummis's bill. But certainly there is this avenue for Democrats to say, yeah, we don't like all the scams. One of the pitches that I give to Democrats, which I think works really well, is that there's no VC, there's no hedge fund, there is no executive, there's no founding team that is extracting value out of Bitcoin. You have that with virtually every single other crypto that in existence. Now, I wouldn't say 100% of them, but it's a very large portion of them. We're talking 99%. That's a very compelling argument to Democrats. They like this idea of a bottom-up, community-driven organization, or I should say cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, and that's something that I've been pitching to them, and it's been something that's been working for sure.
Well, it's it's very. I'm very excited to hear that. I'm very excited to hear that because I think it's incredibly important, again, that, and I've said this a million times, that Bitcoin is not a partisan issue. Clearly, it helps both parties, regardless of the aisle. Now, my question to you, just out of curiosity, I'm trying to make sense of all this. Why do you think that Bitcoin policy or crypto policy has had more success with the Democratic Party on the state level than it has on the federal level?
Well, I think that's changing, certainly because you're starting to see a lot more federal lawmakers move the right direction. But let's just like answer the question at hand. Ultimately, at the federal level, there's a lot more of a top-down approach, especially if you're the party in power. When Democrats were in power, when they were the ones controlling the White House, you had a White House filled with folks that were part of the anti-crypto army. They're part of the Elizabeth Warren team. And because of that, it created an environment where it was very difficult for Democrats to be able to be so forward-thinking on this stuff, because that would put them out of alignment with the most powerful people within their party. And at the end of the day, like, we have to respect the fact that this is still politics. And Democrats that are out there that they were supportive of Bitcoin before, digital assets before, but might be a little bit quieter, have a much more room to breathe, because they know that by being pro-Bitcoin and pro-digital asset now, when there is no party in power at the top, pushing down on them, that it's not going to put their political career at risk. And ultimately, at the end of the day, man, like, these people, this is their career, this is their life, and they're not. Unfortunately, you're not going to see every single politician be willing to put their career on the line for this type of issue. Now, we have seen Democrats do that, but because of this flip, you're going to see things move really quickly the other direction. But the same is true also for Republicans. Like, don't be dissuaded. Like, there are plenty of Republicans, especially before Trump became so pro-Bitcoin, that were like, I don't like this stuff. I think it's going to cause problems, all sorts of national security issues. All of that is changing very, very rapidly. Of course, Republicans are still in the lead, but I think there's a big, big open door here for Democrats to be pro-Bitcoin.
Do you think in 2028, the next presidential election, Trump can't run for office anymore? Do you think that the Democrat presidential candidate will be pro-Bitcoin?
I believe that there's a very, very strong chance that Democrat presidential candidate that wins that primary will be pro-Bitcoin. The difficulty is there's a big war going on in the Democrat Party right now. They are fighting over who's in power. You have the AOC Bernie audience, you've got the Elizabeth Warren audience, and then you've got probably what I'd consider to be like sort of like the more moderate approach, like the Gavin Newsoms of the world. There is literally, it's a knife fight in the Democrat Party right now to see who will control the future of that party. And so it's going to matter a lot for support for Bitcoin on who wins that power and if they are pro-Bitcoin or pro-crypto.
So let's talk about the different elements, because that's fascinating to me. So obviously you have the establishment, the Elizabeth Warren, they're anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin. Do you believe that the Gavin Newsom and the more populist wing of the Democratic Party, like AOC and Bernie, are they pro-Bitcoin?
So Gavin Newsom is certainly someone that I would identify as a high-value target for like someone who could be very pro-Bitcoin or pro-crypto. His state has actually established crypto regulation before, and one time when there wasn't, he didn't think it was done right. He actually vetoed a bill. So he certainly he's in this space and he understands it to a degree. On the AOC Bernie side, it's going to come down to if someone can get in there, come in their inner circle and actually show them why Bitcoin matters, because if we don't, we're headed towards a really bad path, because AOC and Bernie, specifically AOC, are already on the campaign trail. They're doing their big anti-oligarchy campaigns. People have seen them. There's like 30,000 people showing up. But part of her stump speech is being like, Trump is going to do all these things for the billionaires and the crypto bros. Is like, she says that like every single speech. So she's actually headed on a path which is like an unfortunate path, where she views like everything as sort of all in one together, and she's saying negative things about it. So I would say if you're friends with AOC or you're friends with Bernie and you have an access to that audience, because they won't meet with lobbyists, that's sort of their MO, which I can respect. But if you're friends with them, you have their ear, I mean, we got to get in the ears of these people, because I really view it's going to be either the Gavin Newsoms of the world or it's going to be the AOC Bernie types, and they have massive audiences showing up for them for their rallies.
Well, Dennis, it's been an honor, man. I love having these conversations with you. We just explore it, and just you give us the latest and greatest of what's happening in essentially the political landscape in Bitcoin, in terms of Bitcoin regulation. Again, on the state level, I think you're doing amazing work. I think you're the leader in that, man. And it's incredible what you've done in such a short amount of time. And of course, on the federal level, the relationship that you and Senator Lummis has, I think is so important, man. So Dennis, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for joining me on Simply Bitcoin.
Thank you. And it's a big team effort. We couldn't do it without our team and the lawmakers that help us get it done.
Vote President Porter 2028.
Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledn has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending, with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally have not only an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledn is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well, and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially, what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to HODL while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust, allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you. Check out Ledn.io today.